situation where you felt like you were being ignored at work, or perhaps you have felt that when you walk in a room that no one's paying attention to you. Well, this happens sometimes, and majority of the times when this issue comes up, there is something that needs to be done about your executive presence. In this video, I'm going to share with you some very candid, honest tips that can help you start to develop your executive presence, and some mistakes that you want to try to avoid making as you are developing your executive presence. And you're going to want to stay until the very end of this video. The reason being is that I'm going to share with you the absolute number one reason why people do not do as well with their executive presence as they would like to. And I have seen this particular reason happen all of the time as a C-suite executive, as a manager, and as a director for the past 20 years. I have seen leaders aspire to greatness, and then they miss this one aspect that just completely just drops them down in terms of their executive presence. So I want to make sure that you avoid doing anything like that. And so to start off, I want to help you understand what is executive presence. A lot of people wonder, well, what is it? They hear it spoken about, it's like a buzzword, they're not quite sure exactly what it is. Well, an executive presence is really the way that you are presenting yourself as a leader at work. And there's a video that I did I think it's probably several years ago now, where I talk a bit more about what executives do. And executives are the individuals who are the executives. They are the people that are your leaders, that are responsible for, let's say, a big project, and they are getting the project done. They are the ones that execute on the project. And this is something that's very important as a leader for you to start to develop. There's a difference between leaders, and there's a difference between leaders with an executive presence. And you want to be the leader that has an executive presence. So there's a lot of things that go into it. So one of the actual challenges that I see people face as it relates to developing their executive presence is to not know how they want to be perceived as a leader. Oftentimes, we as professionals we just step into these roles, and we're not shown how to conduct ourselves as professionals. We're not taught how to be able to manage very complicated and very difficult situations that come up in the workplace. There's a lot of things and a lot of situations that we're simply just not taught how to manage and how to do. And so we come into these roles as a graduate of a college program, or perhaps not even a graduate, and you transition into these manager type roles, and we're left wondering, well, how do I manage these situations? So there's a lot that we just don't learn and we just don't know about. And so it makes it very difficult for us to know how do we develop our executive presence if no one has taught us. And so oftentimes what happens is that you are in these leadership roles and people become very, very frustrated with how you're communicating. And that's the big thing with executive presence is communication. How are you communicating with other people? And so before I continue, I want to say hello to everyone that's joining today. I appreciate you spending just a few moments out of your day with me today. I am talking about Executive Presence 101, some tips for you to learn at work. This is something that is talked about, and it's definitely a skill set you want to have if you're trying to elevate yourself as a leader. So if you have any questions specifically as it relates to developing your executive presence, please learn from my over 20 years of experience in this very short amount of time that will absolutely fast track your career growth. So I'm here really to support you on your journey to learn more about how to develop your executive presence and some challenges that you may face along your journey. So I see Coleman C says 360. Hello, how are you doing? How are you doing today? Appreciate you all for joining. And so I'm just talking to you very candidly about some things I've seen that happen with people are trying to develop their executive presence. So one of the first issues is that we just aren't taught how to do it. We don't know what to do. We transition into leadership roles, not being given the tools that we need to be leaders. So we don't know how to communicate to our team sometimes, and we don't know how to manage very friendly and very contentious situations when they come up as leaders. We're not taught how to deal with circumstances that come up when you're given confidential information that you really cannot share. And so a lot of times people just don't know what to do. It comes down to communication. Communication is the number one part of executive presence. And that's just not you speaking verbally. It's actually a mix of your verbal, your nonverbal, your written communication, and just how you're conducting yourself. So you want to make sure you're getting some support. Get with people who have been at that executive level. Those are the individuals that are going to be able to help you. There's a lot of people on YouTube that will talk to you about executive presence. This is what you need to do, and etc. But what I encourage you to do is look at their history and make sure that they have been in a C-suite role as an executive, because they cannot tell you about executive presence if you haven't been in that higher level role. And I say that because I've been a C-suite executive for many, many years, and I see a lot of people talk about it, but sometimes that knowledge base, you just have to have a certain level of experience to know that, and you can kind of pick up on it when you're interacting with people like that. Another challenge that people make when they're trying to develop their executive presence is they get into this place where they're trying to be the buddy to everybody. They're trying to be everybody's friend. They want to hang out and communicate the way they did before they became a manager. They still want to have a lot of fun at work and joke around and be silly. And when you're developing your executive presence, there's a lot of things that change, and how you communicate and interact with your team is definitely one of them. You have to present yourself in a way as a leader, and you do want to be very cordial, very polite. You have to have that builds a certain level of charisma that you absolutely need when you're trying to develop your executive presence. However, when it comes to laughing, joking, and having a good time all the time, that's something I would encourage you to really think about, because people will respond to you the way that you respond to them. And when you are in a leadership type of role as an executive, what I've seen that happens is that when people start to let their hair down, so to speak, or let their guards down, that people pick up on it and they will treat them accordingly. Let me give you a story that happened to a friend of mine many, many, many years ago. So she just started working at a new role as a director, and she had been promoted from within. And so she knew her peers already. They knew she was transitioning into a higher level role. And when she made that transition into her role, before she made that transition, she used to joke around and be kind of silly with them at work. She would talk about things that were perhaps inappropriate, not to talk about at work, and really have those boundaries that I talk about in my 3-part boundary series here on my YouTube channel. You should check out. It's absolutely going to help you be able to set those boundaries at work and as a professional. But nonetheless, she kind of blurred those boundaries and just was being very silly. So what happened is that as she transitioned to that director level role, her peers did not respect her, and they did not take her seriously at all. They wouldn't listen to what she had to say. They did not want to hear what she had to say when it came to her giving them instruction and guidance in the role that she was in. So what happened? She came to me and was very, very frustrated because she told me, I do not understand why they are treating me this way, and I've transitioned to this director role. Are they jealous of me? Are they mad at me? Like, why are they treating me so badly and not listening to me? And I can't move the department forward if they don't listen. And so we had a good conversation about it, and what ended up happening. So she ended up having to spend an additional amount of time to build her executive presence with them. And I tell my clients this all the time: when you're building your executive presence, it's not easy. It's not easy. And if it was easy, then everybody would do it. But it's not. And sometimes you will come across situations where things might be a bit contentious, and it might be a bit harder than what you thought it would be. And so what my friend ended up doing was that we had a conversation, we talked about it, and developed a game plan for her. And she was able to go from the buddy at work, having a good time, laughing with everybody, to the executive that people respected. Now, I can talk a lot more about that journey in terms of how she got there, all of the many things that she had to do. If you want me to, leave it in the comments below. Let me know if you want to know more about this story, because this is actually a very important story that a lot of people deal with. Of course, I focus on women in leadership, but I will say that this impacts all genders because of the context of it and just our nature as people in terms of us making that transition. So if you want to learn more about that story, then let me know. I will do a separate video on that because that takes a lot of time, and I want to make sure I give you all a quick win as it relates to executive presence tips while you're at work. And once again, I appreciate you all for joining today. Hello, hello. Thank you for being here. Feel free to comment if you have any questions specifically about developing your executive presence, or if you need some insight, or you just are maybe struggling with something in your particular career as a leader, I'm here really to support you. Please learn from my over 20 years of experience as a C-suite executive, as a manager, as a director, and a public speaker and executive coach. I got a lot of knowledge I can share with you just to help you fast track and avoid some mistakes that I made over the years. So we talked about a couple of tips that can help you. And the first tip for those of you who are just joining was really think about how you want to be perceived as it relates to being an executive. Do you want to be that very friendly person, or do you want to be more on the conservative as leader type of person? And then you also want to just keep in mind that it's going to be a bit of a challenge when you're transitioning as an executive. There's a lot of things that come up for you. There's a lot of experiences that you will have to navigate because oftentimes, when we're developing these skills, we're not taught how to do it. So I want to share with you just one more strategy. This is the most important one. This is the one I want you all to stay to the end, because I will tell you that this, if you remember nothing else from this live, this is the main reason why leaders are not successful in developing and maintaining their executive presence. Are you ready? Are you ready for it? Because this is important. This is the number one reason, and I'm telling you this from over 20 years of observing this type of situation. The reason why people will struggle with their executive presence and become very frustrated at their jobs, or feel like their coworkers are not listening to them, or people are being very disrespectful and not treating them the way they need to treat them as a leader, is because they are not being consistent in how they present themselves all of the time. I've mentioned this in many of my videos. You have to be the same leader when the sun is shining and the birds are chirping outside as the same leader when there's a thunderstorm, there's a tsunami, and there's lightning bolts here and there and everywhere. You have to be that same consistent person, because that's what people need to see. When there is chaos going around, they need to see their leader is not in chaos mode. They need to see that their leader is calm, that is very decisive, that can make those decisions. And so what happens oftentimes when people are trying to develop their executive presence is the following: that they build it up, they develop themselves, they communicate at that higher level, and then something happens and they just say, oh, I'm just going to let my hair down, and I'm just going to talk to them any kind of way and just have a good time and just be silly. Well, I will tell you that is what happens. This is the reason why you may be struggling with your executive presence, is because you're not being consistent. And so if you need some support in terms of how to be consistent with your executive presence, I have a lot of resources for you, especially here on my YouTube channel. I have a video on I have a couple videos on executive presence. I have a conversation that I had with a fellow coach about executive presence. And of course, you're welcome to check out any of my videos here. Follow me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and here on YouTube as well. I have a lot of resources to help you develop your executive presence. And if it's something that you are in a new leadership role and you need to get yourself in a better position, or perhaps you're very experienced and you're noticing that people are really struggling with the way you're presenting yourself, or you're noticing that you're not making the impact that you were previously, then reach out to me. Contact me at info@exciteexcellence.org. I'll be happy to have a call with you and talk about your specific situation to see exactly what it is that's missing and how we can help you to reestablish your executive presence. So, for those of you who have just joined, I've shared several strategies to help you be able to develop your executive presence. These are tips. These are things that people don't talk about that often. But the one that I want you to remember, the most important tip, when you are developing your executive presence, if you don't remember anything else out of this live video, is to be consistent all of the time, regardless if things are going great or if things are going not so great. That is the number one key to developing your executive presence. There's all of other things, they matter. How you communicate, how you speak, how you conduct yourself, how you dress, how you position yourself, all those things are very important. But if you're not consistent with it, then none of it matters. And I will tell you just from my experience that people really do struggle with this. So I want to know from you, what are some questions that you have about developing your executive presence? What are some challenges perhaps that you have faced when you have been developing your executive presence as a leader in your specific workplace? I want to be able to help you overcome any challenges you're facing. We're very quickly approaching the end of quarter 1. Can you believe that, of 2025? And I want to be able to put everybody that's following my channel at a good place where they are starting quarter 2, that they are hitting the ground running. They have a lot of great skill sets. I've hosted several master classes this past couple of weeks. One was on interview preparation to ace your interview, and the second that I hosted today was on present like a pro. There is a masterclass I plan on hosting on executive presence and elite communication skills. I'm going to try to squeeze those in by the end of March. We shall see what happens, but I want to make sure that anyone that's following me is developing these skills that people don't talk about as you are developing into a professional. So if you have any questions, even on the replay, feel free to put them in the comments below. If you found any of this information helpful to you at all, and there's some value there, I appreciate you liking the video. I really appreciate those of you who have already liked the video, so thank you so much for your support. It does help the videos get out to more viewers just like you. And if you have some colleagues of yours that are perhaps in that same situation, share my content with them. Hopefully they'll learn and gain some insight in terms of the real life challenges and ways to handle things as a professional that are sometimes not discussed in a book. So if you have any questions, let me know. I'm here to support you. Just leave them in the comments below. As always, if you found value here, feel free to like the video, share it, and subscribe if you want to make sure that you are setting yourself up as an amazing leader that communicates at a higher level than their peers. So I will see you all in the next video, and I hope you all have a fantastic day. Bye for now.